Hello and welcome back to the Birdcage. I'm Jack Kenna, joined alongside Kolton Kennon and Emmett
You got it.
Swendseid.
Yeah,
Is it my three for three? I've
three
been
for three.
I've been trying to work on it a little bit, but we are going to pretty much recap the last month of Kansas basketball. We have all watched the games. We have all not necessarily been the most impressed with what we've been watching. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's start with the Creighton game that took place on December 4th. That was like college basketball's very first big day.
Yeah, because who else? There's another game before that, wasn't there? I'm
There
blanking on it.
was, I know, UConn played Baylor,
That's what it was.
Duke
There's a
played
second.
Auburn.
Yeah,
So it was ACC against the SEC and then Big
Big
12
12, Big
versus the
East.
Big East.
Big East, yeah.
Yeah,
So it was a big day for college basketball. The Kansas Jayhawks traveled down to Omaha to take on Creighton. If you guys haven't seen that recap, we have an entire video out for it. But that was really bad basketball Kansas played.
yeah,
Yeah. I think David Coit was like the only spark that Kansas had in that second half. I mean, Kansas cut the lead to I think 2 points to start the second half, and then it was really like a 7 to 10 point game like the rest of the way.
You're right. Kansas did cut the lead to two, and then
yeah.
it was followed up by a 9-0 Creighton run.
And that was one of those games that's just tough. Like when I saw their schedule at the beginning of the year, I was like, that could easily be a first loss just because Creighton's not even a bad team. Like, yeah, they were unranked at the time, but like they're a solid team. But it was also, I mean, yeah, you guys both said that was really bad basketball, and it followed later into the week against Mizzou, which obviously we'll touch on. It just seemed like they didn't play their game for that entire week.
No, it wasn't a very good game. Colt Brenner outplayed Dickinson pretty handily. Colk had
For sure.
17, was a menace on defense, and Hunter Dickinson was held to six. And so you're kind of looking at things like that, and it's just like when your best player doesn't play like the best player on the floor, and then KJ Adams struggled as well. Hunter and KJ combined for 10 total points. So it's just
That's
like you can't have that coming from two of your big three guys.
well, and a guy that like probably like if you pull up the stats, it's not like completely true, but for a guy that feel like averages 20 and 20 with Dickinson, if he's having 6 points in a game and if you watch it, he doesn't really contribute any other way in that game, it's going to be tough to win with a guy that we go to or with a guy they go to so much.
Yeah, and I don't I think this is the number. I'm not exactly sure, but I know DeJuan Harris shot the most had the most shot attempts. I think he had 21 shot attempts, and Kansas won't win if he shoots 21 shot attempts if he's the leading shot person to take the most shots.
Yeah, it was a career high for DeJuan Harris in
And
terms
he
of
didn't
shot
make that many
attempts.
of them.
No, he didn't. He shot, I think it was 6 of 21,
Oh,
and he made three three-pointers. So nine of
You know how
his
many threes?
15 points were from behind the arc.
Do you know how many threes he took?
Nine. He went 3 of 9. So you're sitting there and you're just like, ugh. When
That's
DeJuan
it.
Harris has to lead your team in shots, you're not going to win very many games.
no. Well, I will say when he contributes points and the rest of the people are scoring through getting their own buckets or him facilitating, that's when Cave's at their best. But yeah, I mean, I feel like this past couple of weeks he was just kind of trying to get his own at some point in times, and then other times when he honestly probably could have shot it, he'd pass it up.
Yeah, it's weird. He'll take like against Creighton to 21 shots, but then he'll have like a wide open floater and then he'll try and kick it out. It's like what?
Yeah, definitely interesting. I think Bill Self wants him to be more aggressive, and he stayed somewhat aggressive against Mizzou, but it's just kind of like you
He's
have to
missing a lot of layups though.
he's
Like there's a
being
time and a place.
selective.
Yeah, but when he is aggressive and it's going well, KU is at their best performance or close to it.
Yeah. We'll kind of wrap up on Creighton because that game was damn near almost a month ago. But when we were just kind of looking at it, What would you guys rate that performance on a scale of 1 to 10? I know it took a Pop Isaac's miracle game, an all-around game from Kalkbrenner and Ashworth, and you were Hunter Dickinson and KJ Adams didn't contribute nearly at all. But what would you guys overall rate that game on a scale of 1 to 10 for Kansas?
Well, I'd say it's like a 4 out of 10, only because it was their first road game, like their first true road game. So understand, I thought they were going to lose the game going into it. And you can say, well, Hunter Dickinson and KJ Adams barely did anything and they only lost by 10. But Creighton's not a top 15 team. So if they perform like that against an even better team, it's going to be really bad.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I would say I was gonna say around 4 or 5 because yeah, basically what Colton said. Like I was not gonna be surprised if KU lost that game. That's a tough environment to play in. I mean, I feel like home court advantage is real, especially in college basketball, and that's a tough
100%.
environment to play in. But I mean, KU helped Creighton out because it was a rough performance for all of them. They couldn't get anything going. Had the like, yeah, I mean, we touched up on with DeJuan Harris. Like, it gets to a point like you can shoot and be confident, but 21 shots and you're hitting six of them, and he's a really good floor general. Maybe try to get others involved, but no one could. I mean, I don't think anyone was hitting that game.
Kansas also didn't have a lot of transition points. And I think although Kansas looks to Hunter Dickinson a lot, whenever they're part of their best game is when they're in transition.
Yeah, I would
They're
agree.
really good, yeah.
I feel like Creighton did a pretty good job limiting Kansas's transition points, and they also took advantage off Kansas turnovers. So
Hmm.
that's one of them that you're just like, yeah, it was a tough environment to play, rough game. The Creighton Blue Jays escaped with a 13-point win, but then they follow up that Wednesday game on Sunday or Saturday
Sunday.
when they
Sunday,
took on
talk
Mizzou.
about turnovers. Talk about points off turnovers.
You said 15 turnovers with
With
5 minutes
five
to
minutes
go
left
in
in
the
the
first
first
half.
half.
Yeah, they had 15 turnovers and 17 points at one point.
Yeah, Kansas didn't come ready to play, did they?
They
That was
just
so
looked.
bad.
It was crazy to see a team that because I think they can. I think when they're at their best, which it's tough to be at your best all the time, obviously, they're a pretty good team, and they just looked so uncomfortable. I mean, Mizzou bodied them.
Yeah.
And like Creighton, Missouri's good, but they're not a top 15 team. But I will say, I think Missouri's atmosphere was a lot better than Creighton's
I
too.
I just think that's a bigger trap. Like, and you could call me crazy
The
because
rivalry.
at the end of the day, it was a one seed or one team, but obviously not number one because they lost versus an unranked team. But with the history of those two teams, and you're in Missouri's atmosphere, I feel like that could easily be seen as a trap game.
The only bad
100%.
thing, I just feel like not bad, something that Kansas might need to be concerned about is you look 2 years ago when Kansas played Missouri, Missouri was undefeated and KU was undefeated at Mizzou. Kansas had a leader in like Jalen Wilson, and Jalen Wilson was not going to let them lose that game. And I don't know if I technically Hunter Dickinson's probably the leader for the Kansas team, but he hasn't really played like it all season. Whereas you've seen at Kansas teams in the past, they didn't really have one last year. But pretty much before we got there, they always had that one player that wouldn't let them lose those games.
Well, it's
Mhm.
funny because you heard DeJuan before the game. He's from Missouri. He's from Columbia, I think.
Yeah, he's from
He was,
Columbia. Yeah,
he was like, I didn't even know this was a rivalry game. And then you walk into their trap and get kind of stomped on,
After, yeah, he plays
especially
the
at the beginning.
trap and take it. Yeah. Well, and going back to what I was saying earlier, is like that I could see that as a trap game, but there's no need to, even if you lose that game, there's no need to have almost more turnovers than points that late into the first half.
Yeah, it was
no,
really bad.
and
15 and 17, like, are we serious?
And as much as bad as Kansas played that game, if you looked in the second half, KU I think cut the lead to 2 or 3 points. If
Yeah.
AJ Storr makes like 3 shots, Kansas might win that game. AJ Storr did not
Well,
shoot the ball good at all.
when they were getting it to within 2 points, 3 points, and they were sitting there for like a minute, there was at least two Florida Badunga missed layups, two DeJuan Harris missed layups, a Dickinson missed like little floater thing.
Floater.
Like
Do you
two
guys
of
know how
those
many points Kansas scored in the first half?
I think 28, 27.
25.
Jeez, that's insane. Under 30 is crazy.
Under 30 for a collegiate basketball team is pretty insane, I will say. I've had the privilege of watching a few Creighton games where they have put up under 30, but for Kansas, that is insane work.
Unheard
Do
of.
you guys think Kansas is, I mean, when they're at their best, I think Kansas is obviously a top 10 team, but what do you guys think Kansas is right now? I mean, I know the rankings, are they number 7 or 8 in the rankings right now?
8, yeah. They were 10, bumped up to 8.
I've not seen anything impressive for Kansas so far this year. Their North Carolina loss is looking worse and worse and worse, or their North Carolina
Yeah,
win
North Carolina does not
because
look
North
good.
Carolina is
They're not
poor.
even looking good. At the time,
Creighton is
numbers
ruining
9.
Kansas as well. Creighton sucking is hurting Kansas because that, in reality, should
The
be a
resume is looking worse and worse and worse. Yeah.
that
Kansas
Creighton
obviously,
loss should be all right,
yeah, Duke,
hypothetically, right? Like in
Okay,
theory,
yeah, true. They got
Creighton's
the
been getting 20 wins the past 10 years every year. And so in theory, you're sitting there and you're like, "Oh, that loss on the road's not bad." But when Creighton starts playing poor, that loss is becoming a little worse. And Missouri, I mean, they didn't win an SEC game last year. So
yeah.
if they can pull something out of their ass like that again, you're sitting there and you're like, you have two back-to-back road losses to teams who aren't necessarily top 25 caliber.
Well,
no,
and
go
obviously,
ahead.
my bad, but obviously there's two. This is just quick, and then you can go. Obviously, this is two different teams. I still feel like even though they haven't been as impressive, there's more depth this year. But you're talking about road losses in general. In the last 2 years, we're what 8? Like we've lost like 9 of our 8 road games or something, or 8 of our 9 road games or something like that within the
Yeah,
last two years.
the, I don't, Kansas hasn't won a true road game this year, right?
No.
No.
Yeah, and Kansas obviously has a really impressive win against Duke, but after that, their most impressive win now looks like it's NC State. NC State isn't even a top 25 team.
You can argue Michigan State because they're ranked right now.
Yeah, Michigan
Michigan
State.
State's a good win. Yeah.
But honestly, that's on a neutral site.
Same
Both
with
were ill.
They
Duke.
shot horrific.
Yeah, and
That
Duke
was quite literally anyone's game for like
and Duke didn't play that well either.
towards the end. Yeah, I mean like this
Well,
Kansas team hasn't
to
really impressed me
Kansas's
super
credit,
much.
to Kansas's credit in that Duke game. I mean, yeah, Duke wasn't at their best. Con Knipple, known for a shooter, couldn't get going. But I will still say their defense was really intense, and I think it threw Duke in for a loop.
And they were
And
missing
Mayo
Dickinson.
and AJ Store played good, and Rylan Griffin.
Yeah,
And they
Griffin had
were
a
and you were
great second
missing
half after
Dickinson.
taking a Valentine type shot to end the half.
Valentine. That
Four
was
and one.
actually a
What are
Valentine
you
shot.
doing?
I can't
That
imagine what
was
Coach Self
not
said in that
a
huddle.
Dude, I
That
shot.
could
was
not
in the huddle.
imagine looking at Coach
I
Self.
wouldn't want to be in the halftime locker room
Four on
after
one,
that
and you
one.
pull it from the logo.
That was insane work. Holy heat check.
That's a hero or zero shot. You hit that, it's like whoa. But he shanked it,
It
and
wasn't
Tyler
even close,
Parker hits
really.
a three.
But
Wasn't even.
Colin asked that question of what we think that Kansas team can be.
I
When,
don't think Kansas can win a national championship.
when it's at its best, this Kansas team can roll on all cylinders. But I don't think this team has what it takes to get to a Final Four. I think they can get to a Sweet 16 because I think that's just how talented this team is. But once you get to the Sweet 16, I think that's where
It's
it
gonna be
literally
rough.
becomes matchup dependent. And
Yeah.
I think that's where it could be kind of scary for Kansas because I just
And
don't know who our leaders are going to be.
yeah, and like obviously it's still early. We haven't started bit Kansas hasn't started Big 12 play, but on paper Kansas can beat everyone. But when it comes to matchups, if there's a dominant bid that's quicker and more athletic than Hunter Dickinson, I don't think Kansas has a chance. With like if their other players are playing good around that bid,
Well, no, because if you put, and I'm like agreeing, because if you put someone like Flory, who maybe is a little more athletic, he's just gonna hug you like this, and he's gonna get 4 fouls, and he's sitting the rest of the
and then
game.
Zach Clements will come in.
Yeah.
We'll move on real quick. We're going to play a game at the end of this where it's kind of, I'm just going to read off the Kansas Big 12 schedule and we're going to say win or loss.
All right.
Um, but what we're going to do first is we'll talk about NC State a little bit. Kansas came out firing against NC State. And then that game kind of fizzled away and it got a little close for a little bit, but the Jayhawks ended up prevailing. I think the score was 75-60. A pretty
Yeah, something like
comfortable
that.
Kansas win. They actually covered the spread, but you were sitting there and that game never really seemed all that comfortable.
It was, and obviously it was way too early. but I think they got a little too comfortable. They went up, what, 12, 14-0 before NC State could buy a bucket. To Kansas' credit, their defense looked pretty solid, but yeah, because then all of a sudden, once NC State got their first bucket, I think it was like 17-12, and it's a KU timeout or something like that. Like
Yeah.
once
Mhm.
they got going, it started to make it a game a little bit.
Every time I watch a Kansas game, I've been a Kansas fan for a really long time, but since we've been there, no lead feels safe with Kansas, really. I feel like Kansas is always gonna let the other team cut it to like
Maybe,
8 or 10 or even lower. But I don't know. I feel like Kansas isn't playing down to their opponent necessarily. I just think, I mean, thankfully Kansas got out to that huge lead because if they didn't, then that game would have been a lot closer. But it's just it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, obviously I'm not a Hall of Fame coach, but he's just changed the starting lineup so much. I feel like the players don't have like the amount of chemistry that you would want at this point of the season.
That's a good call. We'll also talk about starting lineups later. But you brought in a good point. We've seen games where Diggy Coit is starting. We've seen games where it's AJ or where it's Zeke or where it's Griffin. And that lineup never seems to be stable. And I think that makes it really hard for these guys to either get going because you don't know if you're going to start or come off the bench. So how do you mentally prepare for your role if you don't even know? That's just what I'm thinking. I don't
well,
know how
it's just so
Coach Self
weird because
announced
I
the
feel like I've
lineup.
never seen this with Self. I don't know if he's trying to figure out because he's had really talented teams before, teams more
Mhm.
talented than this, obviously. And I felt like he kind of knows what he's doing. It feels like he's just like testing the waters as it's not, he's acting like it's not halfway into the season. And like what Colton said, I'm not a Hall of Fame coach. I'm sitting here in an office room, but
Yeah, we're
I mean,
podcasting right now.
yeah, yeah. Bill Self is a very talented coach, but it's just interesting to see the way he's going about it.
Yeah. One of those games, or in the NC State game, Hunter Dickinson had a historic game where he nearly had a triple double. Extremely impressive for somebody who stands at 7'2". And then Zeke Mayo had a game where he had 26 points, a career Kansas career high. And so you're sitting there and you're like, this looks like the Kansas team that we've kind of been seeing all year. But it still had KJ Adams put up six. And so now it's like one of these games where KJ Adams the past three games has combined for 21 points, and you're kind of wondering what's
Well,
the word there?
They
and
should
that
just play
doesn't,
four out. Four out. Take KJ on the bench. Play four out with Hunter Dickinson. Spread the lane, and they're going to be so much better.
well, yeah, and Jack, like you said, you mentioned this that you and Colton talked about in the last podcast, but I was going to touch on that too. That kind of adds up to Colton's like, where do we see KU being as far as talent? I think some of their best basketball was played. Now, yeah, NC State's not a top 25 team, but as much as I love KJ, I was defending him in the Duke coverage when we talked about that. When he was on the bench and they were going 4 out 1 in, their spacing was really, really good. And that led them to get that comfortable lead. Maybe not comfortable, but that lead of 15 again, where you had Mayo pass it to Dickinson in the high post. He comes off the roll, he gets a finger roll. Then Dickinson gets back-to-back dunks. There's a Diggy Coit three or whatever. Like the spacing was really good. And I think that's something, at least Bill Self, when we touch on starting lineups, should take into consideration for sure.
I think it's going to be really hard to replace KJ from the starting lineup just because Bill Self's touched on it. He does so much other things on the court, but from our perspective, I think our offensive ceiling is just so limited with KJ being in the lineup.
Well,
It just kind of
He can't shoot the
confuses
ball. He
me.
can't shoot.
well, and then K
No, he
Cool, keep him
can't
in
because he
because
can't
he
shoot.
does. Yeah, he can't shoot, and he does a lot of other stuff, and I like that. He brings a lot of high level energy. He loves to play defense. That's cool. But then when he's in, they run that high to low free throw line block dump in. Just and that's what's tough. He can't shoot. I was gonna say keep him on the wing, but if he gets on the wing, what's he gonna do? He's gonna drive and dump it in.
I think it can get really crowded at times because you have a guy like DeJuan Harris, who sometimes doesn't look at the rim. And then you combine that with a KJ Adams who can't shoot outside of the paint.
If they want to play 4 out with KJ Adams has to be in the on the inside, and they have to put Hunter Dickinson on the outside.
I don't think that's crazy at all.
But I mean, it would be awful because Hunter Dickinson, like
Would
no offense to
start.
him, he's a really good basketball player, he's just slow.
Okay,
Well, and does he start getting trigger happy and shooting threes?
before we move
Or
on,
like
I want to ask you guys, would you buy Kansas? Would you sell Kansas? Or would you hold the Kansas stock?
So I'm a Kansas fan. I hope they win the national championship, but I just don't think they're a national championship good enough right now.
Because if we all hypothetically have the Kansas stock right now, we bought it at national championship level competitor. And I think I would have to agree with Colton. I'm not super impressed so far this year. I might have to sell the Jayhawks or at least hold the Jayhawks because I think
they've
the team has so much potential.
they do, and that's where I was going to with the teams that I've seen this year. The SEC alone loaded.
Big
I
East is
would
good.
what?
The Big East and ACC are pretty good too.
SEC is unmatched though.
The Big East stinks, bro.
Dude, you can't
Oh,
say the Big East.
Trust
You
me, the
got
Big
dude. The
East.
SEC has three teams that could be number 1 seeds in the tournament.
The
St. John's finished
SEC is
top 4.
quite easily the best conference in basketball this
And
year.
I used to say it was a Big 12. The SEC is unreal. But going back to what you were saying, I would maybe sell, at least hold them, but I'm not buying.
Okay,
Not
here's what we're
buying
gonna do
the Jayhawks.
to finish out the episode. I'm gonna read off our Big 12 schedule, and we're just gonna hypothetically go win loss, win loss, win loss. How we think it's gonna go. We start the year off on December 31st, New Year's Eve against West Virginia at home. Win loss, win loss. What do you guys think?
Win.
Win
I agree. I'm gonna put in the win. Then we travel to Florida to take on UCF. What do we think?
could be
I think it'll be
rocky.
close, but I
Could
think
be
we'll win.
rocky. They lost there last year.
I think this UCF seems better,
Yeah.
but I also think we're better. I think we get the win.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing is you gotta. This team is. We keep touching on it. They have way more potential. They have a lot more depth. I think they squeeze out a win.
And then we host Arizona State. What do you guys think?
I think that's a win. I think they start
I
3
mean,
0.
here's the thing: is like, will they get tested? Will they maybe lose? In the Big 12 at home, yes. But from what I'm seeing, they're Allen Fieldhouse merchants. Like, besides the BYU game, they love to use Allen Fieldhouse to their advantage. It's tough for them.
So then we'll start, or we'll pretty much have our second Big 12 road game. We travel to Cincinnati on a Saturday or a Sunday.
I
But
think
yes,
that's. I did see Kansas losing the game. I'm not gonna lie. Cincinnati is pretty good.
Yeah, are they ranked? I thought are they?
I think Kansas can win this game, so we'll leave it up to Emmett to be the deciding factor.
Don't do that to me. Dude, it's tough because they always. I mean, I guess they always drop some like random game. I mean, I could see it being a loss. I
They're
hope.
ranked 19th, Cincinnati.
Yeah, they're not. That's what I thought they got into the rankings. They're good. It could if they keep the way they're playing, it could be a loss. It could be a win. It's honestly a toss up.
All right, you decide, Emmett.
I
Win or
kind of
loss.
didn't help, but I'll say a loss. Give them a loss.
And then we travel to Iowa State. We have to kind of hurry it up a little bit.
Okay,
We're gonna get
That's a
kicked out.
loss. That's a
We're gonna
loss.
that's a
get kicked
loss.
off of
All right,
the Zoom.
all right, loss.
I don't think we win that one either. So then we have to go to we host Kansas State.
Win.
Win. They're gonna
Yeah,
win.
I think that's a win. Then we
Cincinnati.
travel to TCU.
I think they'll win the game.
I think
Win.
that's a win.
That's a win.
I think that's a win. Then we have to play Houston at home.
Win. Allen
Win.
Fieldhouse.
Win. Dude, Houston was projected to be was like had the spread last year, or they were projected to win at Allen Fieldhouse, and they got rocked.
Houston is also 6-3. They're not that good.
That's a
And then
win.
we host UCF.
Win.
Win.
Okay,
If
we're
they're Allen
on the
Fieldhouse
same
merchants, they
page.
just put win for
Then we
everyone.
travel to Baylor. Baylor
I think
struggled this year,
I
but
think
it's
they'll
still
lose the
Baylor.
game.
it
I
could
think that
be a it could be a win.
I think Kansas loses this game. Is that two L's, two
yeah.
losses?
Yeah,
2-0.
I
Cincinnati and it's
I
not
think
even
that
crazy to say that. It's just I'm not impressed with Baylor,
I'm not
but
impressed either, but it's
they're
still
not
Baylor.
all that bad either though.
And then we host Iowa State, a home game.
It's got
I think
they'll
that'll
get
be
their
close,
revenge.
but I think
They'll
Kansas
get
will
their
win.
revenge.
All right,
I
mark
don't
it
Is
think they'll
Baylor
get
down.
not
swept
ranked?
by a single team.
Baylor's not ranked anymore.
No.
Oh,
And
I don't
then
think
we
they'll get
go,
swept by a single team.
and so then we will go to Kansas State.
Uh, I,
Could be a loss.
dude, I don't know. I feel like Kansas just doesn't have a leader on their team to like I said, we're not losing. Can't they don't have someone that's gonna be like, we're not losing this game. So I feel like it could be a loss, but I don't
Okay.
know.
I'll mark it down as a loss. These last few games are going to be kind of interesting because we play Colorado twice at Colorado versus Colorado. I don't think we lose one of those games.
No.
Colorado's good, but I think we Kansas wins.
So I'll mark two wins for that. We
Yep.
travel to Utah to take on the Utes. I think Utah's bad. I would be willing to put a mark there for Utah. And then we play Oklahoma State at home. I think that's a
When
win.
That's a win. That's a
And then
win.
we go to BYU, which I think is a tough. I think BYU is a good program, and I think they're going to be ready for that game. I'd mark that as a loss.
Fair
Then
enough.
we play Texas Tech at home. I think we
uh
I think we win at home, and then we
Yep.
play Arizona at home,
Win.
which I think we win. I'm not impressed with Tommy Lloyd's Arizona, and
Neither
then
am
we
I.
finish the year playing Houston at Houston.
I think I
Might be
just
a
put it as a
loss.
I'll put it as a win. I think they'll win.
I think they scrape out a win.
I don't. Yeah, that game's interesting. I think they'd probably
That really
that
could be
they could lose that game. I could see a world where they lose that game. But right
yeah.
now, this team is 8-2. The rest of the year, we have them winning. I can't do really good math right now.
Count Brown 9-2 with Browns win.
14. So that's gonna be 22.
5, 22.
I think it's 22 and
Oh,
22
even
and
my
8.
season.
22 and 8 is what we think the Kansas Jayhawks can do towards the end of the year.
I feel like that's right.
Like that's kind of just what we've seen from this team
This
right
is
now.
not even that's not even bad.
No, that's
But
still a win. A season over 20 like wins is really good, but we just
maybe
need
not for
something.
Kansas' history, but
I think there's a few losses that we kind of marked down there. The loss at Baylor, a loss at K-State, BYU that I think can all be avoided. But you have to travel to Iowa State, which I think is a
that's
super
really
tough
tough.
place to play. You travel to Baylor, tough place to play. You travel to Houston, tough place to play. The Big 12 is really good. So it's like one of those things where would you guys be all right with a 22 and 8 season? Because I think I would
Yeah.
be preseason, I'd be kind of let down a little bit.
I'd be let down preseason wise, but just because with all the hype I thought they had with when I kept seeing people they were bringing into the portal, but I
I
was
think Iowa State will win the Big 12.
Iowa State's really good.
yeah, they are. They're really good.
Alrighty. That is pretty much all the time we have left. Any final closing thoughts?
No,
No.
we gotta start
No.
hooping though.
There you go. We do have to start hooping. We really do. The Kansas Jayhawks will take on Brown on Sunday, in a game I'm sure some some of us here will be having a little post game, a little recap for you guys. So I just want to thank you guys for listening. That is all that we have from the Birdcage from me, Emmett Colton. We appreciate you guys listening. We will see you guys later.